Did you know that one of the greatest war movies ever made was kept hidden from audiences for over 30 years? When Army of Shadows first came out in France, critics and viewers mostly ignored it, some even calling it boring and unpatriotic. It was only decades later that people realized they were looking at a masterpiece, a quiet and powerful painting of what it truly felt like to be a hero in the shadows. Picture a world of gray coats, rainy streets, and whispered secrets, where the bravest act wasn't firing a gun, but simply staying alive to fight another day. This isn't a movie about big battles. It's about the silent war fought in the hearts of ordinary people. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Army of Shadows. Number 20. The movie that was a ghost. Army of Shadows was released in 1969, but for many years it was almost impossible to see. It was a huge failure in France, where audiences were still sensitive about stories of the resistance that weren't purely heroic. The film was seen as too sad, too gray, and too focused on failure and fear. For a long time, it didn't come out on video or DVD in many countries, including the United States. It wasn't until a restored version was shown in film festivals in the early 2000s that people finally discovered its genius. A whole new generation of movie lovers realized what they had been missing. It was a masterpiece born at the wrong time. Number 19. The American Who Saved a French Classic. The reason most people can see Army of Shadows today is thanks to a famous American director, Francis Ford Coppola. He loved the film so much that his company, Zoetrope, helped bring it to American theaters for a very short run in the 70s. Even then, it didn't do well, but Coppola's respect for the film kept its memory alive. He saw what others didn't, that the film's quietness was its strength. Years later, when film critics started calling it a lost masterpiece, Coppola's early support was remembered as a moment of pure cinematic passion. What looked like a French failure was rescued by Hollywood's greatest storyteller. Number 18. A star who wasn't an actor. The main hero, Philippe Gerbier, is played by Lino Ventura, one of France's most famous actors. But here's the weird thing. Ventura never wanted to be an actor. He was a professional wrestler and a successful businessman before he accidentally fell into acting. He was known for his tough, no-nonsense face and his gravelly voice, not for smooth movie star charm. Director Jean-Pierre Melville chose him precisely because he wasn't a typical hero. Ventura looked like a man who had seen real trouble, a man who would be quiet because he was thinking, not because he had nothing to say. That wasn't just casting, it was finding a hero in a real fighter. Number 17. The director who lived the story. The most important fact about Army of Shadows is that its director, Jean-Pierre Melville, was actually part of the French resistance during World War II. He wasn't just making a movie, he was sharing his own memories. He fought alongside brave men and women, he felt the constant fear of being caught, and he knew the terrible weight of making life or death decisions. He even used his own code name, Melville, during the war. Every scene in the film is filled with details that only someone who was there would know. This personal connection is why the film feels so incredibly real and so deeply sad. That wasn't just a director's vision, it was a soldier's memory. Number 16. The movie with almost no music. If you watch Army of Shadows, you'll notice something very strange. There is almost no music. For long stretches of the film, the only sounds are footsteps on wet pavement, the wind, or the quiet breathing of the characters. Director Melville made this choice on purpose. He wanted the audience to feel the same tension and silence that the resistance fighters felt every day. In their world, a sudden noise could mean death. The lack of music makes every small sound feel huge and important. When music finally does play, it feels like a powerful emotional release. What looked like silence was actually the loudest statement of all. Number 15. The famous prison escape scene. One of the most exciting scenes in the film is when Jean-Pierre and another man escape from a Nazi prison. The way they get out is not by a big explosion, but by a clever, quiet trick. They convince a guard to let them measure the window in their cell for a curtain, and then they simply jump out. This scene was filmed in a real former prison building, which made the actors feel truly trapped. The actor who played the German guard was so convincing that the crew felt nervous watching him. The scene is a perfect example of the film's style. Brains over brawn, quiet tension over loud action. What looked like a simple plan was actually a masterpiece of suspense. Number 14. The title. That everyone misunderstood. The title, Army of Shadows, is not just a cool name. It comes from the idea that the resistance fighters were like an army, but they fought in the dark, hidden from sight. They were shadows, invisible to the enemy, and often to their own people. When the movie first came out, many French people didn't like the title. They felt it made the resistance sound sneaky and dishonorable. But Melville meant it as a sign of respect. These people had to live like ghosts to save their country. Their work was secret and dangerous, and they rarely got any thanks for it. What sounded like a dark name was actually the highest compliment. Number 13. The actress who hated her own performance. Simone Signoret, one of the most famous actresses in the world, played Matilda, a brave and smart member of the resistance. But after the film was released, she told people that she thought her performance was terrible. She felt she was too glamorous and famous to play such a simple, real person. She couldn't see what everyone else now sees, that her quiet strength and sad eyes were perfect for the role. She brought a deep humanity to a character who could have easily been just a plot device. Sometimes, artists are their own harshest critics. What looked like a perfect performance to us felt like a failure to her. Number 12. The Color of Fear. The entire movie is filmed in very cold, muted colors, mostly grays, blues, and dark greens. There is almost no bright color anywhere. This was not an accident. Director Melville and his cinematographer worked hard to create a world that looked like a black and white photograph, but with just a little bit of color. They wanted the film to feel like a memory, something sad and distant. The color blue is especially important, representing the coldness of their world and the constant presence of fear. The look of the film is so powerful that you feel a chill just watching it. What looked like a simple color choice was actually a way to paint emotion onto the screen. Number 11. The real-life heroine. The character of Matilda was based on a real person, a famous resistance fighter named Lucy Aubrac. Jean-Pierre Melville knew Lucy Aubrac personally and was inspired by her incredible courage and intelligence. In real life, she helped organize a famous prison escape, just like the character in the movie. By basing a character on her, Melville was honoring the many women who played essential roles in the resistance, women who were often forgotten in history books. The film shows that the fight for freedom was not just carried out by men with guns, but also by women with brains and incredible bravery. That wasn't just a character, it was a tribute to a forgotten hero. Number 10. The scene that was too real. There is a very difficult scene in the film where the resistance members have to execute one of their own who is a traitor. They do it in a quiet, cold, and businesslike way. It is not exciting or heroic. It is just sad and terrible. To film this scene, the director made the actors rehearse it over and over again until the act felt mechanical and empty. He didn't want them to act angry or emotional. He wanted to show that killing, even for a good reason, is a horrible, soul-crushing task. The scene is so powerful because it feels so real and so wrong. What looked like a simple scene was actually a deep statement about the true cost of war. Number 9. The submarine. That never was. There is a famous scene where the resistance fighters are taken to a beach in the middle of the night to be picked up by a British submarine. The tension is incredible as they wait in the darkness, not knowing if it will come. But here's the secret. The submarine itself is never actually shown on camera. We only see a small light in the water and we hear a quiet horn. Melville chose not to show the submarine because he wanted the audience to feel the same uncertainty as the characters. Is it real? Is it a trap? By not showing it, the moment becomes more suspenseful and more memorable. What looked like a missing special effect was actually a brilliant choice of imagination. Number 8. The director's famous trench coat. Director Jean-Pierre Melville was famous for always wearing a trench coat, just like the characters in his movies. He wore one every day on set, rain or shine. It was his personal uniform and a symbol of his love for American gangster films and film noir. In Army of Shadows, the trench coat becomes a character in itself. It protects the fighters from the rain and the cold, but it also helps them blend into the shadows of the city. When you see Lino Ventura in his coat, you're seeing a little bit of Jean-Pierre Melville himself, a director who always saw himself as a lone warrior. That wasn't just a costume, it was the director's soul on screen. Number 7. The film that felt like a gangster movie. Even though Army of Shadows is a war film, it feels a lot like a gangster movie. The characters talk in code, they meet in secret places, they have strict rules, and they face death every day. This was completely intentional. Jean-Pierre Melville started his career making gangster films, and he saw the resistance fighters as a kind of noble gang. They were outlaws, but they were outlaws for a good reason. This style makes the film unique. It's not a traditional war movie with flags and marching soldiers. It's a quiet, tense story about a small group of people living outside the law to save their country. What looked like a war movie was actually the ultimate gangster film. Number 6. The final shot that says everything. The very last shot of the film is one of the most powerful in cinema history. After the main characters are gone, we see a long line of German soldiers marching through the Arch of Triumph in Paris. It is a victory parade for the enemy. There is no music, just the sound of their boots on the ground. It's a heartbreaking image that shows how far France had fallen. This scene was not in the original book, but Melville added it to show that even when individuals are brave, sometimes the world is still a cruel place. It's a quiet, devastating ending that stays with you forever. What looked like a simple shot was actually the film's final, sad verdict. Number 5. The code name. Based on a painter. The main character's name is Philippe Gerbier. This name was not chosen by accident. It was a tribute to the French painter Jean-Baptiste Simeon Chardin, whose full name was Jean-Baptiste Simeon Chardin. Melville was a huge fan of the painter's quiet, dignified work. By giving his hero a name connected to an artist he admired, he was adding another layer of meaning. Gerbier, like a figure in a Chardin painting, is a simple, serious man caught in a world of chaos. It's a small, hidden detail that shows how much thought Melville put into every single part of his film. What looked like a simple name was actually a secret work of art. Number 4. The real resistance weapons. To make the film feel as real as possible, Melville didn't use fake movie props. He contacted the French army and borrowed real World War II weapons. The pistols, the rifles, and even the small grenades that the characters use were all authentic. The actors had to learn how to handle them correctly, and they were surprisingly heavy and clumsy. This realism makes the action scenes feel less like a movie and more like a documentary. When a character fumbles with a gun, it's because the real gun was difficult to use, not because they were a bad actor. What looked like movie props were actually museum pieces. Number 3. The book that was banned. The film is based on a novel of the same name by Joseph Kessel, who was also a member of the Resistance. But here's the weird fact. When the book was first published in 1943, it had to be published secretly. France was still occupied by the Nazis, so a book about the Resistance was illegal. Kessel had to smuggle the pages out of the country one by one. The book became a symbol of hope for people fighting in the shadows. When Melville decided to adapt it decades later, he was not just making a movie. He was bringing a piece of secret history out into the open for everyone to see. That wasn't just a book. It was a weapon made of words. Number 2. The actor who spoke no French, Lino Ventura, the Italian-French star who plays the hero, grew up speaking Italian. He learned French as a teenager and always spoke with a slight, noticeable accent. For a French film, this was very unusual for a leading man, but Melville loved it. He felt that Ventura's accent made his character, Jean-Pierre, seem more like an outsider, a man who didn't quite fit in anywhere. This added to the character's lonely, isolated feeling. It's a small detail, but it makes the hero feel even more unique and determined. What sounded like an imperfection was actually a perfect character detail. Number 1. The director's promise to a friend. The ultimate reason this film exists is a promise. Jean-Pierre Melville promised his friend, a resistance fighter who was captured and killed by the Nazis, that he would one day tell their story. He wanted to make a film that was completely honest, a film that would show the fear, the boredom, the terrible choices, and the quiet courage of their fight. He didn't want to make a movie that made them look like superheroes. He wanted to show that they were ordinary people who did extraordinary things. This promise is the heart and soul of Army of Shadows. It's why the film feels so personal, so sad, and so true. That wasn't just a movie, it was a sacred promise kept. Bonus fact here is a hidden story about the film's most famous scene. The quiet execution of the traitor was filmed in a remote, abandoned farmhouse. To get the actors into the right mood, director Melville did something very strange. He made them all sit in silence in the cold, dusty room for a full hour before filming. No one was allowed to speak. He wanted them to feel the weight of the air, the chill of the stone walls, and the heavy sadness of what they were about to do. He told them, "You are not killing a man, you are killing a friend and a part of yourselves." This strange, intense ritual created an atmosphere so thick with emotion that the final scene feels almost unbearably real. The actors weren't just performing, they were living through a shared, solemn ceremony. One small choice changed movie history. Army of Shadows is not a film that celebrates war. It is a film that celebrates the incredible strength of the human spirit in the darkest of times. It teaches us that heroism isn't about loud speeches and big explosions. It's about the quiet decision to keep going when everything seems hopeless. It's about the courage to do the right thing, even when it's the most painful thing in the world. The film is a monument to the ordinary people who become heroes when they have no other choice, who fight in the shadows so that others can live in the light. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time.